Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. So what's today?
This guy that we're going to talk about today, I stumbled on him when I was doing the research for that unsolved murder of Tammy Zawicki, which I'm just going to say, just doing like a quick search, I found, I think it was 18 truckers in the 90s that were serial killers, which just blows my mind.
Well, yeah, that seems like an awful lot, especially considering those are only the ones they know about.
Well, that's what I mean. And that's the ones that they killed multiple people that they were able to track it down to. There's one called the Redheaded Killer. He was active from 78 to 92. At least 6 women with red hair. They were murdered in Tennessee, Arkansas, Pennsylvania, and Kentucky. The killer was never captured. Like, to this day, they don't know who was doing it. So, crazy, right?
Yeah.
But anywho, it's a lot. But like I was saying, is this guy, I stumbled onto him because he was once a suspect in Tammy's kidnapping, rape, and murder, but he was later ruled out due to DNA evidence. The murderer of the week is Clark Perry Baldwin. We're going to discuss rape, kidnapping, murder of 2 pregnant women, and we're going to dabble with a little child abuse. Clark graduated from Nashua Plainfield High School in 1979. He was a long-haul truck driver for Martin Transport. In 1987, he married a single mother named Rochelle Bobenmoyer. She brought 5 kids into the marriage. One of the daughters, it's a lot. One of the daughters, her name is Jamie. She later says that Clark was an awful man, and she said that he was a monster.
What made him awful?
So Jamie said Clark would abuse all 5 kids.
How long were they a part of their lives?
So part of what made him awful is he would strip the kids naked and whip them with a belt, which is pretty awful.
Yeah. Why do they have to be naked?
I don't know.
I'm not saying that you should whip them with a belt.
I guess he wanted to see the welts he left. I have no idea. You can feel free to reach out to this guy and ask him if you'd like. But
so spoiler alert, he's alive.
He sure done diddly he is. But he would use water torture as a form of discipline for the kids. He would hold the kids' heads under water as punishment.
That's not punishment, that's just torture.
Correct. Needless to say, the mother filed for divorce before their first anniversary. So I'm glad that she decided to rectify that mistake.
Isn't that supposed to be the honeymoon phase?
Good thing she left when she did then.
Did they date a while? Because that's pretty crazy that just going into it, I guess he was comfortable disciplining the children.
Or he just really had zero fucks on deciding how to parent someone else's children.
Yeah, I got this. You just got to drown them for a bit. Then they behave. Little Johnny might be unconscious, but he'll come to.
Sounds not like a recommended form of punishment.
Yeah, sounds like quality parenting.
Sure it is. So she files for divorce. She goes on and raises her kids without this piece of shit. Good for her that they all survived, because that's how he wasn't
questionable. The start of it.
Yeah.
Turns out drownings for punishment can lead to death.
You don't say. I didn't know that. So a year later, in 1988, Clark is newly single because his wife is filed for divorce.
You think he tried to discipline her with the drownings, and that's what the line drew?
No, I don't. I don't think she was okay with him drowning the children, and that's why she filed for divorce. Because as we've seen with lots of different women, they're okay with the abuse as long as it's directed at them. But then they turn into that mama bear mode when the abuse is directed at their children. So I'm going to say she was not okay with the abuse towards her children. I don't know if he was abusive towards her. There was no report on it.
But
Unbeknownst to Clark, he impregnated one of the women he was boinking. And we're going to make a mental note, okay, of him getting somebody knocked up, because we're going to talk about that chick later. Now we're going to fast forward to 1990. Clark was living in Nashua, Iowa, and Springfield, Missouri, because, like I said, he was a long haul trucker.
Mm-hmm.
And during one of his driving trips in 1991, Clark kidnapped a 21-year-old hitchhiker from Kansas. He allegedly held her at gunpoint in his truck. Clark proceeded to assault her and then rape her. Then he choked her, attempting to kill the young woman. This 21-year-old girl managed to escape the clutches of this monster and ran to police.
How the hell did she escape?
So I'm guessing he choked her until she passed out and didn't die, and then he chucked her out of the cab of his truck thinking that he killed her, and she eventually came to and was able to get help.
Yeah.
She told the officers that he hit her over the head, he tied up her hands, he put tape over her mouth. She also told police that Clark had attempted to strangle her to death. Police track him down and they arrest Clark. Now, while in custody of police, Clark admits to police that to everything having to do with the assault on this woman. Like, he admits to all of it. I'd love to say that he goes to jail, but he was temporarily released, awaiting his grand jury proceedings, like to see how they're going to move forward with things.
Mm.
And I'm not sure what happened during that time period, but the charges against Clark were dropped. He was never prosecuted. Apparently, the authorities could no longer locate the victim. So I guess without her being able to testify, they had no case.
Well, I would imagine what she went through was pretty scary, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere in the vicinity of that guy.
Especially knowing he was out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, she narrowly escaped that, so.
It's awful. Clark, the man who admitted to kidnapping, assaulting, raping, and attempting to murder a young woman, is set free because there's nobody to testify. And now we're going to put a pin in Clark and we're going to talk about a woman named Pamela McCall. She was 22 when she first got married to a trucker. Long story short, they end up having a son together, and he wants to stop doing the long haul trucking and stay more local in like Pennsylvania where they were living. That made Pamela very unhappy. So he stays behind with their son, and Pamela, who enjoyed constantly being on the go, she would regularly hitchhike with long haul truckers to get around. And while out gallivanting, Pamela meets another trucker. This guy's married, so they could only meet up during his long haul drives. He would come scoop her up and they would do their thing while he was driving, which Pamela becomes pregnant with this man's child in late 1990.
Does her husband not miss her when she goes off, or she's not married? He is.
So they're both married, but I think her and her husband are like kind of separated because she thought she was marrying I would describe her as having like a gypsy type soul. She's ready to keep. Yeah. And that was the life she enjoyed. And the second they had a son, her husband was like, no, he wanted to put roots somewhere. And she didn't. So she just continued on with what her life was, and he stayed behind with their son. But the trucker that she's hooked up with is also married, and he's cheating on his wife when he's supposed to be out working because he's scooping this chick up. And Pamela is now pregnant with this guy's kid. On Saturday, March 2nd, 1991, Pamela and her married boyfriend are in Tennessee. Pamela is 24 weeks pregnant with their baby girl. She calls her mother in Virginia and tells her that she'll be home in a few days, and then they chit-chat for a bit before they hang up. About a week later, Pamela and her boyfriend are traveling still through Tennessee when they get into a huge fight. Like, their fight was so bad, he pulls off onto the shoulder of the highway and lets Pamela get out of the truck. Can I point out she's 7 months pregnant with his child?
What?
Yes. Pamela, being a regular hitchhiker, she knows how to get from place to place, right? So it's not a big deal. By the way, not only is she 7 months pregnant, but it's in the middle of the freaking night when he lets her out of the truck onto the side of the road.
The hell?
So,
Clearly
right?
love.
Nonetheless, Pamela gets out and he takes off, leaves her there.
Does she know about his waterboarding?
No. So this isn't Clark. So we put a pin in him. We're going to talk about her. It's a different guy, different trucker, different married guy. It's not Clark.
So it's just a random lady?
It was a random trucker boyfriend that was married that impregnated or that we're talking about.
Okay.
So, like I said, Pamela gets out. He takes off. The next day, a driver going down that same highway sees a woman sitting there, kind of propped up, but she looks weird. So the driver calls police to go check on this woman sitting on the side of the highway. Police arrive, and it's Pamela. She's been violently murdered, and her killer propped her up on the side of the road so all the passerbys could see her.
The hell?
Yeah. Pamela and her unborn child were both dead. Pamela had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. DNA was recovered off of Pamela's pantyhose. And oh, by the way, she was found 30 miles from the truck stop where she had called her mother a few days prior, and her boyfriend had departed from the previous day. I know 30 miles is quite a bit on foot, but she wasn't that far. Police eventually identify Pamela. They collect all the gas receipts from all the truck stops within the area for the last few days so that they can run the truckers' names to see if they have criminal records or any DNA they could compare it to. But unfortunately, they get no hits. So they decide to hold off on testing any more DNA that they found on Pamela's stuff because it's such a small sample that once it is tested, it would also be destroyed. So it was like a one-shot wonder back then. Like, unless you think you have your killer, don't waste the little bit of DNA that you have, because once it's gone, it's gone. It's super amazing how far DNA has come.
And how little they actually need now.
Yeah. On March 1st, 1992, another woman was found murdered on the side of I-80 in Wyoming. She suffered a head trauma and was strangled, and she had been raped. Police end up nicknaming her Bitter Creek Betty because she was found near Bitter Creek and they had no idea who she was. Police believe that her body was in the snow for several weeks before she was found, which again, I'd like to point out, kind of matches up with Clark's victim that survived, getting clobbered on the head, tied up, raped, strangled. Bitter Creek Betty was a white woman with dark hair between the ages of 24 and 32 years old. She was about 5'8" and 125 pounds. She was wearing a wedding band and also had a C-section scar and a rose tattoo on her chest, which, by the way, she's never been identified. Like, to this day, this woman has never been identified, which blows my mind. Yeah.
Somebody didn't miss their spouse?
Right? She's wearing a wedding band and she's given birth. But I mean, I guess maybe the wedding band could have been like a fake wedding band just so that she could avoid unwanted attention.
What?
But no one missed her?
What? Wait, let's rewind. What?
So, have you ever heard of like somebody just wearing a wedding band so that people will leave them alone? Like if you don't want to be hit on? Okay, well. Anyway. I don't know. So then, by all accounts, she should have somebody that misses her. Because if it was a legitimate wedding band and she's given birth, this woman has a husband and a child out there somewhere.
But that means the husband did it.
Does it? Because it doesn't.
I'm saying it does.
I'm telling you it doesn't.
How do you know? Nobody came forward that somebody is the dad to that child out there, assuming the kid's also alive. And you said she's not identified, so you don't know that her husband didn't do it.
So I do know, because spoiler alert, because you're making me jump ahead. The DNA that's left on Bitter Creek Betty matches Clark. So He's the one that raped her and murdered her. But where is this woman's husband? Why did he never claim her? You know what I mean? It makes me so frustrated. But thanks for being a spoiler, Claire.
How do you know? But I'm so confused that you don't know who she is, though.
Exactly. I can't wrap my head. I cannot wrap my head around it. How is it that she was married and had a baby? But that's again where I was thinking more along the lines of maybe she gave her child up for adoption and she wore a wedding band because she was not married and she was pregnant and she's planning to give the baby. You know what I mean? Like maybe it was one of those situations. She gave her baby up, but still wore the wedding band. I don't know. I cannot wrap my head around how somebody that was married and had a child was not identified to this day. Like she was found murdered in 1990 in the early 1990s, and she has still not been identified. I do have pictures of Bitter Creek Betty's tattoo and sketches of what she looked like, so we'll post those. You guys can give those a gander, see if anybody recognizes any missing relatives in your family. I have no idea. 1 month later, so April 11th, 1992, 400 miles away from where Bitter Creek Betty was found, another girl was found murdered. Just like with Bitter Creek Betty, this girl is also, to this day, still unidentified. Police end up naming her I-90 Jane Doe. And also like Bitter Creek Betty, I-90 Jane Doe suffered head trauma. She was raped, strangled, and dumped on the side of the road in Wyoming. I-90 Jane Doe was another young white girl around 17 to 23 years old. She was wearing a size 5 jeans and a blue and white checkered crop top. She was 5'6", 115 pounds, and she was 10 weeks pregnant at the time she was murdered.
How many people are not identified?
Right? It literally is mind-blowing. She had no parents. Somebody impregnated her. I mean, nobody missed this girl either.
By the way, that was a weird-ass way to say that.
Well, you don't know.
Impregnated her?
So, I don't know if I want to go on record saying this, and I might chop it out, but there was a lot of prostitution and kind of hoeing around for
that
rides.
hasn't stopped.
Yeah, but like at the truck stops, and since this girl is picked up at a truck stop, I don't know, maybe she's just in a tough spot and she's just hitchhiking, but she got pregnant. I don't know if she knows who the father of her child is. Nobody knows who she is. Nobody knows her life story. So you really can only speculate because she might not have been in a relationship with whoever got her pregnant. You know what I mean?
Stop saying you know. I don't know. I'm not a prostitute.
Okay. I never said you was a prostitute.
You kept saying, you know. I don't know.
I was just saying, you know, as in like, are you comprehending what I'm saying? You know? I was just simply saying she might not know who the father of her 10-week pregnancy is. But anyway, at some point during all of this, which by the way, I also have pictures of what I-90 Jane Doe was wearing and a sketch of what she looks like because, again, still to this day unidentified. And at some point during all of this time, Clark bragged to his ex-wife about how he had raped and strangled a girl from out west and tossed her from his truck. Now, I don't know if that's the chick that survived.
Yeah.
Or if it's one of these girls.
It's a weird thing to bring up anyway.
I think he was doing it more on like a threatening kind of level, not on a, haha, guess what I did today, honey.
It's still a weird thing to bring up.
He was investigated in 1992 for it, but it was in Iowa and nothing came of it. So
is that why you said it like that? It was in Iowa. Do we need to add that to the list of places we will not go?
No, so like the bodies were found in Wyoming, you know? So if she's reporting it,
first thing you know. I don't know. I don't know nothing about this case. You're
I
acting like
told you, I said that I-90 Jane Doe was found in Wyoming. If he's bragging to his ex-wife and she's living in Iowa, she reports it to the police in Iowa. They have no cases or any complaints or anything that matches what she's reporting to police. So nothing comes of it. Make sense? I didn't say, do you know? Shut up.
I know.
So let's fast forward a few more years and shut up. In 1997, the Secret Service raided his Springfield, Missouri apartment because, you know, getting away with rape.
You? Do you have know written down every other sentence?
I don't have it written down once, but okay. So
you've been using it a lot.
In 1997, the Secret Service raided his Springfield, Missouri apartment. As if getting away with rape, kidnap, and murder wasn't enough, Clark was making counterfeit money on his computer. What? And he had two I know.
When does he have time for all of that?
I have no idea. He had two female accomplices who were also charged with counterfeiting. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison and was eventually released in 1999. So there's no real history of what Clark was doing from 1999 and 2008. I would bet money on the fact that he was not a good boy for that amount of time. I wholeheartedly believe that this man has other victims out there. But in 2008, Clark lived in Newport News, Virginia, and he was working as a taxi driver because he had retired from his long-haul trucking days. Clark ends up meeting a woman named Tanya Edwards Huddleston, and Tanya had a young family. She had a baby boy and her boyfriend. They were down on their luck, so Clark let the trio move into his apartment for a while. The struggling family and Clark lived together for about 3 months. Tanya said Clark would drive his cab all day and then come home and relax. She said he was kind and generous, and he preferred to be home versus going out and about on the town.
That's because he'd prefer to be home counterfeiting money. Hey, so you think since he's doing his counterfeit money thing, that he was paying prostitutes with that money?
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Can you imagine putting in a hard day's work to find out you got paid with counterfeit money?
Is it a hard day's work?
It depends on the activity, I guess.
I would assume that he stopped with the counterfeiting after he got out of jail because there's
but beforehand.
Yeah. I'm wondering also if he was filling up his truck with gas or diesel using the counterfeit money.
Maybe. Dave one time was at the gas station and went inside to grab like a soda and a bag of chips, and he had ones, right? Because he had a bunch. I don't know why he had a bunch of ones. Anyway, so he goes in the gas station, pays with these ones, right? And the cashier runs the little marker over each one of them, and the look on Dave's face, he was going to be counterfeiting stuff. It wouldn't be $1 bills. But it was just funny when he gets back in the car and he's like, dude, that guy just markered every one of those dollars.
That's funny. Maybe they thought it was
I think it was
counterfeit.
Well, that's what the marker's supposed to be.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say maybe they thought it was counterfeit because he had so many ones. They were like, "You're not getting one over on me, there, buddy."
It's like a soda and a bag of chips, so there were only like 5 or 6 of them. It's not like he paid for gas and had 50 ones. And even then, but it's just like, I think it's just a slow day, and just wanted to see how much Dave could hold his temper.
Or maybe he wanted to keep staring at your husband. He's like, man, you sure is a looker.
I don't feel like he made eye contact with Dave deliberately. Could you see somebody holding up a $1 bill to, check a watermark? I don't even know.
Clark's living with this woman, Tanya, and her boyfriend and their baby. Eventually, Clark decides he wants to move back to Iowa to go live with his mother and his brother. And Tanya and her boyfriend and their baby go their way together. Like, they don't go with Clark, but struggling family, I guess, is doing better thanks to Clark, and they move. But Tanya keeps in contact with Clark even after they move. Now, remember that blinking that led to a surprise pregnancy from earlier? Well, that resulted in a baby girl named Jazz. In 2018, 30-year-old Jazz Baldwin from New Hampton, Iowa, learned through DNA testing that Clark was in fact the father. She reached out on Facebook to him and kept in contact with him ever since. Because, she wanted to know who her dad was. And keep in mind, Clark has no criminal history other than the counterfeiting. So let's go back to poor Pamela and her unborn child. Police decided to run the little bit of DNA that they have, since with all the advances in technology, to see if they get a hit. And it's been 28 years. That's an insane amount of time, by the way. For 28 years, this guy has gotten away with literally killing this woman and her child. So officers send the pantyhose off to a lab in Wyoming to do the mitochondrial testing.
Mm-hmm.
The same testing that sweet old Jazz did to track down who her father was. The lab tells officers, hey, we don't know who your suspect is, but it does match 2 other victims in our system. It matched the Bitter Creek Betty chick and the I-90 Jane Doe. So whoever killed those 2 also killed Pamela. So the FBI compares the DNA to the ancestry DNA stuff, and ding, 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 we have a familial match, which is Jazz. And Jazz just found out her dad is Clark. So the FBI and state police tracked down Clark. They put him under surveillance for 10 days. Investigators took DNA samples from his garbage when he would take it out to the dumpster from his apartment. And they also took DNA off of a Walmart shopping cart. When Clark's DNA tested positive to the semen found on all 3 of the victims, Clark Perry Baldwin was arrested May 6th, 2020. Yeah. So
has he gone to trial already?
He has not. He's currently awaiting trial. Spoiler. Tanya, Clark's old roommate from 2008, said she was shocked and described Clark as a gentle giant. She said, if he was going to hurt anybody, she felt like it would have been her, because she'd thrown some hissy fits in front of him in his own house. And he was one of the kindest people that she had ever met. And if you were ever in need, he was willing to help you. Police believe that they can track Clark to other unsolved murderers in Iowa, Kansas, Mississippi, Texas, and Tennessee. And Clark is currently awaiting trial for the murders of Bitter Creek Betty, I-90 Jane Doe, and Pamela McCall. And they also charged him with the murder of Pamela's unborn daughter. But that is my case on Clark Perry Baldwin. And at one point, he would, like I said in the beginning, he was suspected to have murdered Tammy Zawicki, but the DNA that was found on her body did not match his. So that's what ruled him out. But any other cases that police might have, pretty much anywhere this guy ever drove that are similar, conked on the head, strangled to death, and raped, he might be good for. Granted, I did mention that there were a lot of other mobile murderers, but it just blows my mind.
Yeah, that there were that many.
Yeah. I'm glad he was eventually caught, but it doesn't feel like justice because he walked around scot-free for so long. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It doesn't even feel like justice when they are able to live an entire life.
I find it frustrating. But I honestly, that's why I said I don't think from 99 when he got out of jail for counterfeiting to 2008, I don't think he was just doing nothing.
But I feel like you can't bash the truckers. There's more good truckers out there than bad ones.
Oh, 100%.
But I feel like the extra scary ones make them all look a little scary, which isn't real fair to the truckers.
I agree.
But every profession has the scandalous sumbitches scum of the earth in it. I'm sure of it.
I'd agree with that statement as well.
Just the number of people who were like the traveling murderers, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It sure is.
You're just saying, hitchhiking is not cool, but turns out not everybody who tries to help you on the side of the roads looking to help.
They sure ain't.
Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.